Elon Musk has taken what is a surprising 9% stake in social media platform Twitter. And that sent the share price soaring this morning. And I want to take this conversation in two directions. The first, of course, is kind of the share price and its movement, and why it's maybe not so surprising, of course, just as a function of the size of his stake. And then the second, probably more interesting angle is what this means from an influence standpoint, and whether Elon Musk is starting to look and act like what we think of as, oligarch-like. So like a Russian oligarch, using his power and influence to really move society in a way that benefits not only himself, but I'm sure in his view, the greater society. And so we'll start with the share price moving. If you think about the fundamentals of the efficient market hypothesis, for example, Elon Musk taking a 10% stake really shouldn't do that much to the share price. It doesn't change future discounted cash flows. But we're in this world now to where Elon Musk particularly can make a certain demographic of traders move share prices, right? There's something that's recently come out called the inelastic market hypothesis. And it's this idea that because there's so much money that's stuck in passive funds and in ETFs and these kinds of things, that there's a supply and demand imbalance with every dollar of inflow that goes into the market, right? There's so much money that chases so few stocks because so much of the market is locked up that I think the data shows that a dollar that goes into the market triggers something like a $5 move, either up or down. And so why the shares have gone up so much this morning, I think is a function of, okay, it's Elon Musk and he has this kind of army of people that you saw with the meme stock stuff and then the crypto stuff, that he can send the market up, or he can send a stock up and down just by a tweet. And so it's really fun to see that, his taking a stake in Twitter has sent the Twitter stock going up like this. I think the more interesting angle, of course, though, is what this means from an influence standpoint. And when you see Elon Musk, I think there's been grumblings up from his camp that he's been thinking about setting up his own social media platform. And so this is an interesting way to get to the end of that goal, which is try and influence the social media platform that he uses as kind of his springboard or his trumpet. And so when we think of Elon Musk, he's been in trouble with tweets in the past, right? He's had issues with the SEC. He's had issues with being accused of manipulating his own stock price, and when he said that there was he had a deal in place for a takeover of Tesla back in the day. And so is this his attempt at kind of going in there and saying, okay, I don't want to be limited in what I can say anymore, and so I'm going to move this social media platform so that it reflects what I want to see in terms of his trumpet. He recently actually published a poll on Twitter where he asked, one of the fundamentals, and I'm paraphrasing here, but one of the fundamentals of democracy is the freedom of expression. Whether Twitter in the last few years, people have felt that has it lived up to those ideals of being a platform for freedom of expression, and I think it overwhelmingly came back no. And of course, it's a bubble-like environment when Elon Musk does a poll on Twitter. I mean, you get Elon Musk followers to respond. But I think it says something about his ambition or his intent here. And when you track that back to, oligarch-like behavior, I think this is interesting because we're always on the side. As individuals, we have a point of view one way or another, and we don't mind when people use their power and influence to benefit the causes that we have a stake in, or that we have a feeling about, right? Like when I think about a lot of the stuff that's happened with the Ukraine crisis right now, and what's happened to the Russian oligarchs, Roman Abramovich is a good example to where a lot of people don't have an issue, or a lot of I think he owned a soccer club called Chelsea. Nobody had an issue with the money that he was pouring into that club when they were using all that money to buy great players and then win really big prizes. So him using his power and influence in that mechanism there's no problem in that until you start to see all this other stuff that happens with geopolitical political tension, and then of course everybody now has an issue with how he makes his money, and they try and take the club away from him, or they forced him to sell. It's the same here, I think, in terms of influence. I'm not saying that Elon Musk is in the same bracket of oligarch-like behavior. I have a feeling that he hasn't had many legs up in terms of his ability or his generating of his wealth. I don't think it's anything like a Russian oligarch, but using the amount of money and the power that you've generated or that you've garnered over the years, and then putting it behind causes, I think is oligarch-like behavior. But it's something that everybody does when you have power and influence. I think it's natural, because just because you have power and money doesn't mean that you lose the things that you care about, right? You just have the ability to move society in a way that benefits you. And so this is interesting from also, I think about people that I listen to. I'd be curious to know of all the people that are pro-Twitter who are anti-Elon, and whether this shifts sentiment a little bit, now that he's put his force behind changing Twitter, and I know one of the issues with Twitter has been its flat share price over the last, since IPO basically. And when you compare it to other social media platforms, I mean, it's underperformed by a ton, right? Like the Amazons, the Facebooks, they've all made shareholders a ton of money as a function of the returns, and Twitter hasn't done that. And so Twitter's received a lot of activist investor attention over the last few years because of its underperformance and a share price. And does this mean that now Elon becomes this kind of, if you had feelings about, what he said in the past, or is his manipulating of the markets, or what he does with cryptos, or all these kind of things, does this give him a bit of a positive shine? Because now all these people that have a stake in Twitter who have a negative feeling towards Elon, he's now putting his weight behind something that they care about. I think that's going to be interesting to see. But this is just a fascinating story. One that, it's a surprise that he's taken such a big stake in Twitter, knowing his history with the platform. But it's also not a surprise knowing his history with the platform. And Twitter has a global reach. And it has this kind of unique value proposition that no other social media platform really does. I mean, it's not a place where you go check on family. It's not a place where you share photos. It really is this place, and regardless of how most people feel about it, that it's got this real-time dynamic, and people still go there to find their news, and people still go there when something happens in society to go and figure out what happened. Like I think of the Oscars recently. I don't watch that much television, like the Oscars and things like that. And the reason that I found out about the Will Smith thing was on Twitter, and that triggered me to go and figure out what happened. And so Twitter has this ability to really be at the leading edge of what society is talking about. And so does Elon, in a way. When you think about the way that the press covers Elon, really anything he does seems to get to the front page of most of the major news publications. And so it's an interesting combo to see this happen. And I'm very curious to see if I guess what happens to Twitter now that Elon is on board. Maybe it's nothing, right? Maybe this is all just a bit of smoke and mirrors, and this is classic Elon and classic kind of covering up something that might be happening at Tesla or SpaceX, underperformance on that side. And they're masters of finding another news angle to cover up maybe underperformance on that side. Think of all the releases, the flamethrower release, and when Elon bought a bunch of Bitcoin or whatever to cover up some of the underperformance on the balance sheet for Tesla. This might just be another way that he's trying to shape the narrative so that it's still positive in his direction and covers up some of the weakness on some of the business operations. But on the other side, he's using his net worth, or his newfound net worth, to shape society. And you got to admire people that have the moxie to do that. But it's going to be interesting to see how he uses this new stake, and whether he actually tries to shape Twitter to a direction that is beneficial to him and helps him in his cause, maybe in his fights against the SEC and all these kind of things. So definitely a story that I'm going to be following for a little while.